Single dad veteran blew bubbles to calm a girl in crisis unaware. Her billionaire mom was watching, and in that fragile moment of laughter, a secret was born that would shatter power, test faith, and change all their lives forever. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The autumn breeze rustled through the maple trees, scattering golden leaves across the park's worn path. Jack Carter adjusted his weathered denim jacket as he walked beside his daughter Emma, her small hand warm in his. The familiar weight of the bubble bottle pressed against his chest from his jacket pocket, a constant companion on their afternoon walks. "Can we go to the swings, Daddy?" Emma's bright eyes sparkled with hope, her backpack bouncing slightly as she walked. Jack smiled down at her, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "Of course, sweetheart. Just be careful not to go too high this time." As they made their way toward the playground, a sharp cry cut through the peaceful afternoon air. Jack's military-trained senses immediately zeroed in on the source, a little girl, probably around 6, sitting on a bench near the sandbox. She was hunched over, dark curls hiding her face as her shoulders shook with sobs. A woman in her 30s, dressed in neat casual clothes that marked her as a nanny, paced beside the bench. Her phone was pressed to her ear, worry etched across her face. "Yes, miss. Hayes, I've tried everything. She won't stop crying. I don't know what triggered it." Emma tugged at Jack's sleeve. "Daddy, that little girl looks sad, like I get sometimes." Jack felt his heart squeeze. He knew that look all too well, the overwhelming emotions that sometimes flooded his little girl, especially since losing her mother. He hesitated, watching as the nanny's attempts to comfort the child failed. "Should we help?" Emma whispered. Jack took a deep breath. Since returning from his last deployment, he'd learned to be cautious about involving himself in others' situations. But the sight of the distressed child stirred something in him, the same protective instinct that had made him such an effective leader in his unit. "Wait here by the slide, Emma. I'm going to see if I can help." Jack approached slowly, making sure his footsteps were audible enough not to startle them. The nanny looked up, relief flooding her features at the sight of another adult. "Excuse me," Jack said softly. "I couldn't help but notice. Would it be okay if I tried something that helps my daughter when she's upset?" The nanny nodded eagerly, still holding the phone. "Please, anything." Jack knelt down at a respectful distance from the bench, his movements deliberate and gentle. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the small plastic bottle of bubbles. The little girl's sobs had quieted slightly, curiosity beginning to peek through her distress. "You know what I think?" Jack spoke in the same soothing tone he used with Emma during her tough moments. "I think sometimes our worries get too big to keep inside." He unscrewed the cap and dipped the wand into the solution. "But I learned a secret. Bubbles are like little worry catchers." He blew gently, and a stream of iridescent bubbles danced in the afternoon light. The little girl lifted her head slightly, tear-stained cheeks glistening. "See how they float?" Jack continued, his voice warm and steady. "Each one can carry a worry up into the sky, where it gets so small you can barely see it anymore." He blew another stream of bubbles, and this time, the child's breath caught in a different way, not from crying, but from wonder. Her small hand reached out tentatively toward a bubble floating past. "Would you like to try?" Jack offered the wand, holding it out like a peace offering. The little girl nodded, her previous distress beginning to fade. She took the wand with trembling fingers and blew softly, creating a wobbly stream of bubbles that caught the sunlight. "That's it," Jack encouraged. "Each bubble takes a worry away. What do you think happened to that big worry you just sent up?" "It's getting smaller," she whispered, her voice rough from crying but holding a note of hope. "That's right. And you can send up as many as you need to." The nanny had lowered her phone, watching in amazement as the child who had been inconsolable moments ago now sat up straighter, focused entirely on the bubbles dancing before her. A small smile began to form on the little girl's lips. Unknown to them all, Victoria Hayes stood partially hidden behind a large maple tree, her designer suit out of place, in the casual park setting. She had rushed from her board meeting the moment she'd received the nanny's distressed call, but now found herself frozen, watching the scene unfold. Victoria pressed a manicured hand to her mouth as she observed this stranger. This gentleman in worn jeans and a simple jacket. Accomplish what countless expensive therapists and child specialists hadn't been able to do. Reach her daughter in the midst of an emotional storm. The little girl was actually giggling now, chasing a particularly large bubble that floated toward the sandbox. "Look, this one's carrying my biggest worry. Is that right?" Jack smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Well, look at it go. That worry doesn't stand a chance now." The nanny wiped at her own eyes, mouthing a silent thank you to Jack. She turned slightly, speaking quietly into the phone. "Miss Hayes? Everything's okay now. Lily's. She's doing much better." Victoria couldn't tear her eyes away from the scene. Her daughter, who usually took hours to recover from these episodes, was now standing up, her face bright with wonder as she chased bubbles through the autumn air. Then came the whispered words that pierced Victoria's heart. Lily leaned close to her nanny, her voice carrying just far enough in the quiet park. "He makes me feel safe. I wish he was my daddy." Victoria felt tears she didn't understand rolling down her cheeks. In all her years of providing the best of everything for her daughter, the finest schools, the most qualified caregivers, every material comfort money could buy, she had never seen Lily respond to anyone the way she had to this stranger with his simple bottle of bubbles and gentle understanding. The setting sun painted long shadows across Main Street as Jack and Emma left the park hand in hand. The small ice cream shop on the corner beckoned with its cheerful red-striped awning and window full of handwritten specials. "Can we get ice cream, Daddy?" Emma's blue eyes sparkled with hope. "Please." Jack smiled, his heart warming at her expression. It was the same look her mother used to give him. "Sure, sweetheart. You were really nice today, sharing your crayons with that little girl at the park." The bell above the door chimed as they entered Murphy's ice cream shop. The familiar scent of waffle cones and sweet cream wrapped around them like a warm hug. Behind the counter, Mrs. Murphy's gray hair was tucked under her usual pink hairnet. "Well, if it isn't my favorite customers," Mrs. Murphy beamed. "The usual?" Emma nodded eagerly. "Strawberry with rainbow sprinkles, please. And just vanilla for me," Jack added, pulling out his wallet. While Mrs. Murphy scooped their ice cream, Jack's mind drifted back to the crying little girl at the park. Something about her distress had tugged at him, reminding him of Emma's tough days after losing her mom. The simple act of sharing bubbles, of offering a moment of peace to someone else's child, had filled an empty space inside him he hadn't even realized was there. "Here you go, dear." Mrs. Murphy handed Emma her cone, then passed Jack his. "On the house today." "Oh no, I couldn't." Jack started to protest. Mrs. Murphy waved him off. "I saw what you did at the park. This town needs more people like you, Jack Carter. Taking care of others, that's what matters." Jack felt his cheeks warm as he thanked her. Outside, they sat on a nearby bench, watching cars pass by as they enjoyed their treats. "Daddy," Emma asked between licks, "do you think that little girl will be okay now?" "I think so, sweetie. Sometimes people just need a little kindness to help them feel better." Across town, Victoria Hayes pulled her sleek Tesla into the circular driveway of her mansion. Her daughter's nanny, Sarah, met her at the door with visible relief. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm so sorry about calling earlier. Lily was having one of her moments, but everything's fine now, thanks to the Bubble Man." Lily's small voice piped up as she ran down the grand staircase. "He was magic, Mommy! He made the bubbles dance and said they could carry away all the scary feelings." Victoria knelt down, her expensive silk dress touching the marble floor as she hugged her daughter. "Tell me more about this Bubble Man, sweetheart." Lily's face lit up. "He was tall and had kind eyes, like in my storybooks. And he had a little girl, too. She shared her crayons with me after. Can I play with her again sometime?" Victoria smoothed Lily's dark curls, noting how her daughter's usual anxiety seemed lighter. "Maybe, darling. Now, why don't you go wash up for dinner? After Lily bounded upstairs, Victoria retreated to her home office. The wall of windows overlooked manicured gardens, but she barely noticed the view as she opened her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing Jack Carter Veteran into the search bar. Several articles appeared, including one from the local paper. The headline read, "Local Veteran Leads Art Therapy Program at Community Center." The photo showed Jack in casual clothes, helping a group of veterans work on paintings. His smile was gentle, his posture both strong and approachable. Victoria clicked through more articles, learning about his military service, his decorations for valor, and his work with both veterans and children at the community center. Something about his story touched her. Perhaps it was the way he'd transformed his own trauma into service to others. Or maybe it was simply the kindness he'd shown her daughter without knowing who she was. She closed the laptop, unsettled by her interest in this stranger. As a successful CEO, she'd learned to keep people at arm's length, to trust spreadsheets more than emotions. Yet there was something about Jack Carter that made her want to know more. Later that evening, Jack sat on the edge of Emma's bed, tucking her worn purple blanket around her shoulders. Her room was cozy, walls covered with her own artwork and photos of happy moments, including one of her mother, smiling from beside a Christmas tree 3 years ago. "Ready for prayers?" Jack asked, softly. Emma nodded, folding her small hands together. "Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you for ice cream and Mrs. Murphy and Daddy's bubbles. And thank you for the nice lady's little girl. I hope we can play again." She paused, then added, "And please watch over Mommy in heaven. Amen." "Amen," Jack echoed, his throat tight with emotion. He kissed her forehead. "Sweet dreams, Princess." "Daddy?" Emma's voice was sleepy. "That little girl looked sad, like I used to be. But your bubbles helped her, just like they helped me." Jack smiled, remembering the way the stranger's daughter had transformed from tears to giggles. "That's right, sweetheart. Sometimes the smallest things can make the biggest difference." "Like Mommy always said," Emma murmured, her eyes drifting closed. "Like Mommy always said," Jack agreed softly, watching his daughter fall asleep. The memory of his late wife's words echoed in his mind. "Love shows up in the little things, Jack. In bubble wands and bandages, in bedtime stories and holding hands. That's where the magic happens." He stood quietly, adjusting Emma's nightlight, before stepping into the hallway. Through the window, he could see the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. The day's events played through his mind: the crying child, her grateful nanny, the simple act of sharing bubbles that had somehow made a difference. It felt good to be useful again, to bring a moment of peace to someone else's storm. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Jack's old pickup truck as he drove Emma to school. She hummed softly in the passenger seat, her backpack clutched to her chest like a teddy bear. "Have a great day, Princess," Jack said, pulling up to the curb. He leaned over to kiss her forehead. "Remember, I'm picking you up right after your art class. Love you, Daddy." Emma hopped out, her ponytail bouncing as she skipped toward the school entrance. Jack watched until she disappeared inside, then headed downtown to Rosie's Cafe. The familiar brick building with its faded blue awning had become his morning sanctuary before his volunteer shifts at the community center. The bell above the door chimed as he stepped inside, and the aroma of fresh coffee and baked goods wrapped around him like a warm blanket. "The usual, Jack?" called Martha, the elderly owner, from behind the counter. "You know me too well," he replied with a smile, settling into his favorite corner booth. The worn leather seat creaked comfortably beneath him. As Martha brought over his black coffee and blueberry muffin, Jack's attention was drawn to a woman sitting alone at a window table. Her elegant posture and designer clothes seemed out of place in the humble cafe. Her fingers flew across a laptop keyboard with practiced precision while she spoke quietly into a wireless earpiece. Victoria Hayes. The moment he recognized her, she looked up. Their eyes met, and a flicker of recognition passed between them. She quickly ended her call and, after a moment's hesitation, stood up and walked over to his table. "Mr. Carter?" Her voice was smooth and controlled. I wanted to thank you for yesterday. With Lily at the park. Jack gestured to the empty seat across from him. Please, it's just Jack, and there's no need to thank me. Victoria sat down, her movements precise and measured. Nevertheless, I appreciate what you did. Lily can be sensitive sometimes. The nanny said you were wonderful with her. Something in her tone made Jack pause. There was a guardedness in her eyes that didn't match her polite smile. She spoke as if reading from a script, careful and distant. Kids just need someone to listen sometimes, Jack said, studying her face. To show them their feelings matter. Victoria's perfectly maintained expression wavered for just a moment. Yes, well, I should get back to my meeting. She started to rise. Your daughter, Jack said quietly. She reminds me of my Emma at that age, after her mother passed. Victoria sank back into her seat, surprise breaking through her professional mask. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Jack took a sip of his coffee. It was hard on Emma. Still is sometimes. But we found ways to cope. The bubbles were actually her idea. The bubbles? Victoria's voice softened slightly. Yeah. She said they were like little wishes floating up to heaven for her mom to catch. Jack smiled at the memory. Kids have their own way of making sense of things. For a brief moment, Victoria's carefully constructed walls seemed to crack. Something vulnerable flickered in her eyes before she quickly looked away. I should really get back to work, she said. But her voice had lost some of its earlier stiffness. Of course, Jack nodded. The community center keeps me pretty busy too. We're always looking for volunteers, if you're ever interested. I'll keep that in mind. Victoria stood up, smoothing her skirt. Thank you again, Mr. Carjack. As she walked back to her table, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. The way she'd thanked him felt rehearsed, as if she knew more about yesterday than she was letting on. Hours later, after his shift at the community center, Jack waited outside Emma's school. The autumn breeze rustled through the trees, lining the sidewalk as children streamed out of the building. Daddy! Emma's voice rang out. She was running toward him, pulling another little girl by the hand. Jack's heart skipped a beat when he recognized Lily Hayes. Look who I met in art class, Emma beamed. This is Lily. We both love painting butterflies. Hi, Mr. Bubbleman, Lily said shyly, half hiding behind Emma. Before Jack could respond, the click of heels on pavement announced Victoria's arrival. She looked as surprised as Jack felt. Mommy, Mommy! Lily bounced excitedly. Emma's in my class. Can she come over to play, please? Victoria's professional mask softened as she looked at the two girls' hopeful faces. Well, I suppose. Please, Daddy, Emma chimed in, giving Jack her best puppy dog eyes. Jack and Victoria shared a look of amused resignation. Maybe we should exchange numbers, Victoria suggested, pulling out her phone. For playdates? As they swapped contact information, their daughters chattered excitedly about art projects and favorite colors. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the schoolyard, and for a moment, the distance between their worlds didn't seem quite so vast. We'll set something up soon, Victoria promised, taking Lily's hand. Her smile, for the first time that day, reached her eyes. Jack watched them walk away, Emma waving goodbye to her new friend until they turned the corner. He couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow might bring. The Saturday afternoon sun warmed the park benches as Emma bounced on her toes, scanning the parking lot for any sign of Lily's arrival. Jack smiled at his daughter's excitement, remembering how she'd counted down the hours until this playdate. Daddy, do you think she'll like my new drawing book? Emma clutched her treasured sketch pad, filled with colorful pictures of butterflies and rainbows. I'm sure she will, sweetheart. Jack squeezed her shoulder gently. Remember what we talked about, though. I know. Don't get too upset if she has to leave early. Emma's voice carried a hint of worry that made Jack's heart ache. A sleek black SUV pulled into the lot, and Emma's face lit up. They're here! Lily practically flew from the car, her dark curls trailing behind her as she ran toward Emma. The girls collided in a hug as if they'd been best friends for years instead of just meeting days ago. Victoria emerged more slowly, elegant, even in casual weekend wear. She wore designer jeans and a simple white blouse, but Jack noticed the slight tension in her shoulders as she approached. "Emma's been so excited," Jack said by way of greeting. "She hardly slept last night." Victoria's smile seemed genuine, if reserved. "Lily, too. She's been talking about nothing else." They settled on a nearby bench while the girls sprawled in the grass with Emma's art supplies. An awkward silence fell between them, broken only by their daughter's giggles. "So," Victoria began, her fingers fidgeting with her watch, "you volunteer at the community center?" Jack nodded, watching Emma demonstrate her favorite way to draw flowers. 3 days a week, we run art therapy sessions for veterans, among other programs." "That must be challenging." Victoria's voice carried genuine curiosity. "It can be." Jack paused, considering his words. "But it helps, you know? After coming home, finding purpose again through helping others, it made a difference." He glanced at Emma. "Especially after Sarah, my wife, passed." Victoria's perfectly maintained composure softened slightly. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you." Jack watched their daughters playing. Emma was only 4. The center became our sanctuary, really. Art therapy helped her process everything, and working with other vets gave me perspective. He smiled. "Plus, it's hard to stay wrapped up in your own problems when you're teaching a bunch of hardened soldiers how to paint watercolor butterflies." A small laugh escaped Victoria, surprising them both. "What about you?" Jack asked. "What do you do?" Victoria's guard instantly went back up. "I'm in corporate development." Her tone made it clear she didn't want to elaborate. Jack nodded, respecting her privacy. Instead, he shared stories about his time in service, the camaraderie, the difficult transitions, the unexpected moments of grace. He told her about the first time Emma picked up a paintbrush at the center, how her small hands created splashes of color that somehow made the world feel right again. Victoria listened intently, her eyes often drifting to where Lily lay on her stomach, happily coloring with Emma. Jack noticed how she seemed to drink in every detail of her daughter's joy, as if storing it away for later. "She seems lonely sometimes," Victoria said suddenly, so quietly Jack almost missed it. She cleared her throat. "Lily, I mean. It's good to see her with a friend." Jack recognized the pain beneath her words, the same he'd felt watching Emma navigate life without a mother. "Kids are resilient," he said gently, "but they need connection. That's why the center matters so much. It gives them a place to belong." Victoria's phone buzzed, and her professional mask slipped back into place as she checked it. But Jack had seen enough to recognize the loneliness she carried, carefully hidden behind designer clothes and perfect posture. "Mommy, can Emma come to our house next time?" Lily called out, running over with grass stains on her knees and pure happiness on her face. "Please, please?" Emma added, right behind her new friend. Victoria hesitated, and Jack saw the internal struggle play across her features. "Maybe we could start with another park day?" Jack suggested, offering her an easy out. "No, it's..." Victoria took a breath. "Yes, Lily. Emma can come over next weekend, if it's all right with her father." The girls erupted in cheers, hugging each other tightly. "That's very kind of you," Jack said quietly. Victoria nodded, standing abruptly. "We should go, Lily. Say goodbye to Emma." The girls shared one more hug, promising to draw more pictures for each other at school. Jack watched as Victoria ushered Lily toward their car, her movements precise but somehow uncertain. Just before getting in, she glanced back at the bench where they'd sat, something unreadable in her expression. As the black SUV pulled away, Emma waved until it disappeared. "Daddy, can we bring bubbles next time?" "Of course, Princess." Jack helped her gather her art supplies, noticing she'd drawn 2 little girls holding hands under a rainbow. "Did you have fun?" "The best fun," Emma declared. "Lily said her house has a whole room just for toys. Can you believe it?" Jack smiled, but his thoughts were on Victoria, the careful way she held herself apart. the brief moments when her walls had cracked, revealing something raw and real underneath. He recognized that look. He'd seen it in the mirror often enough after Sarah died. The afternoon light streamed through the community center's windows, casting warm rectangles across the worn linoleum floor. Jack and Emma moved with practiced efficiency, setting up easels and laying out supplies for the art therapy session. The familiar scent of acrylic paint and fresh paper filled the air. "Remember to put the newspaper down first, sweetie," Jack reminded Emma as she carefully arranged brushes at each station. She nodded, her small face serious with concentration. "I know, Daddy." "So the paint doesn't mess up the tables." She spread old newspapers with deliberate care, smoothing out the wrinkles. Jack's heart swelled watching her. Emma had become his little helper at these sessions, knowing exactly what needed to be done. Veterans began arriving, filling the room with quiet greetings and gentle teasing. Many brought their children, who immediately gravitated toward Emma. Mike, a former Marine with a prosthetic leg, ruffled Emma's hair as he passed. "Hey there, little boss lady," Emma giggled. "Hi, Mr. Mike. I saved you the blue paint 'cause I know it's your favorite." Just as Jack was about to start the session, movement at the door caught his attention. Victoria stood there, holding Lily's hand, both looking slightly uncertain. Jack's surprise must have shown on his face because Victoria quickly explained, "Lily wanted to see where Emma spends her afternoons. I hope we're not intruding." "Not at all," Jack said, warmth creeping into his voice. "Everyone's welcome here." Emma rushed over to Lily, taking her hand. "Come on, you can sit next to me." The two girls hurried to an empty easel while Victoria found a chair near the back of the room. Jack cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. "All right, folks. Today we're doing something a little different. Instead of a specific theme, I want you to paint what healing looks like to you." He gestured to the blank papers. "There's no right or wrong way to do this. Just let your heart guide your brush." The room fell into a comfortable silence, broken only by the soft swish of brushes and occasional murmurs between parents and children. Jack moved among the easels, offering quiet encouragement and gentle suggestions. He paused beside Sarah, a young veteran who served as a medic. Her canvas showed a sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked, but her strokes remained steady. "The darkness never really goes away," she said softly, "but the light gets stronger every day." Victoria, who had been watching intently, shifted in her chair. Jack noticed her blinking rapidly, touched by Sarah's words. Across the room, Mike was helping his son paint a garden full of wildflowers. "These grew where we used to live," Mike explained to those nearby. "After I came back, I couldn't handle being inside. Spent days just sitting in the garden, watching them sway in the breeze. Somehow, those flowers brought me back to myself." Jack watched Victoria's expression soften as she listened to these stories of struggle and resilience. The corporate polish she usually wore like armor seemed to fade, replaced by something more genuine, more vulnerable. Lily's small voice piped up from her easel. "Look, Mommy, I'm painting the bubbles." Her paper was filled with circles of various sizes, floating against a bright blue background. "See? They're carrying all the scary feelings away, just like Mr. Jack said." Victoria stood and walked over to her daughter's easel, kneeling beside her. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can you tell me more about it?" "These bubbles are like the ones Mr. Jack made at the park," Lily explained, pointing with a paint-smudged finger. "They made me feel safe when I was scared. See how they're floating up to heaven? That's where all the bad feelings go." Victoria's eyes met Jack's across the room, something unspoken passing between them. He saw moisture gathering in the corners of her eyes before she quickly looked away. The session continued, filled with stories shared through art and words. Veterans spoke of nightmares transformed into dreams, of darkness giving way to dawn, of wounds that slowly became scars. Their children painted hope with bold strokes, playgrounds, rainbows, families holding hands. As the afternoon wound down, Jack felt a familiar warmth in his chest. This was why he kept going, why he poured his heart into these sessions. Each story shared, each emotion expressed through art, was another step toward healing, not just for the veterans, but for him too. The families began packing up, gathering artwork and cleaning brushes. Victoria helped Lily wash her hands while Emma showed her new friend where the paper towels were kept. "I had no idea," Victoria said quietly to Jack as they watched their daughters. "The work you do here, it's remarkable." Jack shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. "They're the remarkable ones. They show up, they try, they support each other. I just provide the space and some paint." After everyone had left, Jack stayed behind to clean up. He turned on the small radio he kept in the office, letting it play quietly as he wiped down tables and reorganized supplies. Emma was helping put away the last of the brushes when the news update caught his attention. In local business news, Hayes Technology Solutions has signed a major development deal that will transform the downtown area. The project includes plans to demolish several older buildings, including the community center on Oak Street, to make way for a new tech campus. Jack's hand stilled on the paint bottles he was organizing. The community center, their community center, was going to be demolished, and Victoria's company was behind it. The warmth he'd felt earlier turned to ice in his chest as the implications sank in. Emma looked up from her task, noticing his frozen posture. "Daddy, are you okay?" Jack forced a smile, not wanting to worry her. "Just fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about all the wonderful art everyone made today." But inside his mind was racing. How could he tell these veterans, these families who had found sanctuary here, that their safe space was about to be destroyed? And Victoria? Had she known all along? Had this afternoon's visit been some kind of corporate reconnaissance? He mechanically finished cleaning up, his earlier sense of hope now overshadowed by the weight of uncertainty. The radio continued its cheerful commentary, but Jack had stopped listening, his thoughts consumed by what this news would mean for the community that had become his second family. The kitchen clock ticked past midnight, its soft rhythm doing nothing to calm Jack's racing thoughts. Under the harsh fluorescent light, he sat at his worn oak table, the demolition notice spread before him like a battlefield map. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, untouched. Development notice. Property at 342 Pine Street, Community Center, to be acquired and redeveloped by Hayes Enterprises. The words blurred as he read them for the 100th time. Jack ran his fingers through his graying hair, his hands trembling slightly. The center wasn't just a building, it was a lifeline. For him, for Emma, for countless veterans struggling to find their way back to normal life. The thought of losing it made his chest tight. He glanced at Emma's latest artwork hanging on the fridge, a bright painting of her and Lily playing among floating bubbles. The sight twisted something inside him. How could Victoria's company be behind this? Morning came too quickly. Jack moved through his routine mechanically, making Emma's breakfast, packing her lunch, trying to hide his distress behind forced smiles. As they drove to school, Emma chatted excitedly about seeing Lily at the park later. "Sweetheart," Jack said softly, "let's not get too excited. Plans might change." The park meeting couldn't come soon enough. Jack spotted Victoria sitting on their usual bench, dressed immaculately as always in a tailored blazer and silk blouse. She smiled and waved, but her expression faltered when she saw his face. "Jack, is everything all right?" Victoria stood, concern evident in her voice. He pulled the crumpled notice from his jacket pocket. "Did you know about this?" Victoria's eyes widened as she scanned the document. Her perfectly composed facade cracked for just a moment. Yes. Hayes Enterprises is involved in the development project, but what?" Jack's voice was quiet, controlled, but there was steel beneath it. "Did you know what this would do to the people who depend on that center?" "It's complicated," Victoria said, straightening her spine. "The development will bring jobs, improve the area." "Improve?" Jack laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That center saved my life, Victoria. It saved Emma's childhood after her mother died. It's saving lives right now." Victoria reached for his arm. "Jack, please. I didn't realize." He stepped back, breaking contact. Didn't realize? Or didn't care? You've been there. You've seen what we do. Those veterans, those kids, where are they supposed to go? There will be other facilities, Victoria began, but her voice wavered. Other facilities? Jack's words came sharp and fast now. You don't get it. We built something there. Something real. Something that works. But I guess that doesn't matter when there's money to be made, right? Victoria's professional mask slipped completely. That's not fair. I'm not some heartless... You sat there, Jack cut her off. Watched those men share their stories. Watched those kids heal through art. Was that all just market research to you? Nearby, Lily and Emma played on the swings, their laughter a stark contrast to the tension between their parents. Victoria glanced at them, then back to Jack. Of course not. I would never... Save it. Jack shook his head, feeling suddenly tired. I actually thought you were different. Jack, please, Victoria's voice cracked. Let me explain. But he was already walking away, his shoulders rigid with hurt and anger. The drive home was a blur. His hands gripped the steering wheel too tight. Old memories threatening to surface, memories of other losses, other betrayals. Inside his house, Jack slumped onto the couch, his breath coming too fast. The walls seemed to close in. Somewhere in the distance, he heard helicopter rotors, knew it wasn't real, couldn't stop hearing it anyway. His heart hammered against his ribs. Daddy? Emma's small voice cut through the fog. Why are you crying? He hadn't realized he was. Quickly, Jack wiped his eyes, trying to pull himself together for his daughter's sake. Come here, sweetheart. Emma climbed onto his lap, her favorite stuffed rabbit clutched tight. Is it about the center? I heard you and Miss Victoria fighting. Jack took a deep breath, steadying himself. Yes, baby. I have to tell you something hard. The community center. They're going to tear it down. Build something else there. Emma's lower lip trembled. But what about our art class? And Mr. Dave's story circle? And where will Lily and I paint together? I don't know, honey. Jack held her close as the first tears fell. I don't know. Emma buried her face in his shirt, her small body shaking with sobs. It's not fair. That's our special place. Jack rocked her gently, his own tears falling silently now. Through the window, he could see the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the kind of sky he used to paint with Emma at the center, back when colors were starting to mean something again besides camouflage and blood. Emma's sobs grew louder, more desperate. I don't want to lose it, Daddy. First Mommy and now. And now. Jack held her tighter, his heart breaking all over again. The center had been their sanctuary, the place where both of them had slowly learned to live again after Sarah's death. Now it would become just another loss to survive, another wound to heal. The old town hall's wooden benches creaked under the weight of dozens of concerned citizens. Evening light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across worried faces. Jack sat in the front row, his leg bouncing nervously as Emma leaned against him, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. Around them, veterans from the center filled several rows, their presence a silent show of support. Mayor Thompson stood at the podium, shuffling papers. Next on the agenda, the proposed development of the Pine Street Community Center property. Jack's throat tightened. He glanced back, scanning the crowd, and spotted Victoria in the last row. She wore a crisp business suit, her face carefully neutral, but their eyes met for a brief moment before she looked away. Would anyone like to speak about this matter? The mayor asked. Jack stood, his hands slightly shaking. Emma squeezed his fingers before letting go. As he walked to the podium, his combat boots echoed in the hushed chamber. My name is Jack Carter, he began, his voice rough with emotion. 3 years ago, I came home from my last deployment, a broken man. I'd lost my wife while overseas, and I was trying to raise my daughter alone. He paused, steadying himself against the podium. I was drowning in grief and PTSD, barely holding it together for Emma's sake. Several veterans nodded, understanding written across their faces. One of them, Mike, an older man with a silver beard, wiped his eyes with his sleeve. The community center saved my life, Jack continued. It wasn't just the art therapy or the support groups. It was having a place where people understood, where my daughter could paint her feelings when words failed her, where veterans like me could find purpose again. Emma sat up straighter, her small face serious as she watched her father speak. In the back, Victoria shifted in her seat, her perfectly manicured hands clasped tightly in her lap. This center isn't just a building. Jack's voice grew stronger. It's a lifeline. For some of us, it's the difference between giving up and finding hope again. We help kids from troubled homes, veterans struggling with civilian life, families dealing with loss. He gestured to his fellow veterans. Every person here has a story about how this place changed their lives. Mike stood up next, his voice gruff but clear.
Before the center, I was living in my car. Jack and the others helped me get back on my feet.
Now I mentor younger vets, teach art classes to kids. He looked directly at the town council. You tear down this center, you're tearing down second chances. Other veterans rose to speak, one after another. Sarah, who'd found healing through teaching yoga to fellow veterans. Marcus, whose children had finally seen him smile again after months of group therapy. Each story added weight to Jack's plea, painting a picture of lives transformed. Victoria remained still in her corner, but Jack could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she flinched slightly at each raw confession. She'd never seen this side of the center before, the real human cost of her corporation's plans. We don't have much, Jack concluded, his voice thick with emotion. But what happens in that building? The healing, the hope, the community we've built. That's worth more than any luxury development. Please, he looked at each council member in turn, don't take away our sanctuary. Emma suddenly stood up, her small voice ringing out. The center helps my daddy smile again. Please don't take it away. A heavy silence fell over the room. Jack returned to his seat, gathering Emma close as she buried her face in his shirt. The veterans around them offered quiet words of support, firm handshakes, gentle pats on the shoulder. Mayor Thompson cleared his throat. Thank you for those powerful testimonies. The council will take them under advisement as we review the development proposal. Jack's heart sank at the diplomatic response. He knew how these things usually went. Emotional appeals rarely stood a chance against corporate interests and property values. As people began filing out, Jack noticed Victoria slipping away through a side door, her face unreadable. He wanted to follow her, to make her understand, but Emma's small hand in his kept him anchored to the spot. Did we help, Daddy? Emma asked, looking up at him with hope in her eyes. Jack forced a smile, running his hand over her hair. You were very brave, sweetheart. We all were. The veterans gathered around them, forming a protective circle. Mike squeezed Jack's shoulder. We're not done fighting, brother. There's still time. But as Jack looked around at his chosen family, these wounded warriors who'd found healing together, these children who'd found safety in art and understanding, he felt the weight of reality settling in. Without someone powerful in their corner, without resources to fight back, they were David facing Goliath with no slingshot in sight. The evening light had faded to dusk by the time they left the town hall. Jack carried a sleepy Emma to the car, the veterans dispersing to their own vehicles with quiet goodbyes. The center's fate hung over them like a shadow, their hope as fragile as the bubbles Jack used to comfort crying children. The morning sun cast long shadows across the elementary school's brick walls. As parents and children streamed through the front gates, Jack stood with Emma, adjusting her backpack straps while she chattered about her upcoming science project. His mind was still heavy from last night's town hall meeting. Daddy, look! There's Lily! Emma bounced on her toes, waving enthusiastically at her friend. Jack's jaw tightened as he spotted Victoria walking beside Lily, her designer heels clicking against the concrete. She wore a navy business suit that probably cost more than his monthly salary, but there was something different about her today, a hesitation in her step, dark circles under her eyes partially hidden by makeup. "Jack," Victoria called out softly, stopping a few feet away. "Could we talk for a moment?" He nudged Emma gently. "Go on inside with Lily, sweetheart. Have a good day." The girls skipped off together, their giggles fading into the morning bustle. Jack turned to Victoria, his expression guarded. "What is there to talk about?" "I want to help," Victoria said, stepping closer. "I can look into things at the corporate level. See if there's a way to—" "To what?" Jack cut her off, his voice low but sharp. "To throw us a few crumbs? Make yourself feel better about destroying something that's saving lives?" Victoria flinched. "That's not fair. I didn't know about the community center when the deal was—" "You're the CEO," Jack said flatly. "If you didn't know, it's because you chose not to know." A group of parents walked past, and Victoria waited until they were out of earshot. "Please, just let me try to fix this. I've been up all night thinking about what those veterans said at the meeting. About what you said." Jack shook his head, remembering his wife's favorite saying, "Actions speak louder than words." "Thanks, but no thanks. We'll figure something out ourselves." He turned to leave. "The girls have a play date scheduled for ice cream after school," Victoria reminded him, her voice smaller than he'd ever heard it. "Should I cancel?" Jack paused, thinking of Emma's excitement about seeing Lily. He couldn't punish the kids for adult problems. "No," he sighed. "We'll be there." Later that afternoon, Jack found himself sitting across from Victoria at Sweet Scoops, the local ice cream parlor. Emma and Lily sat at a nearby table, giggling as they created elaborate stories about their ice cream sundaes being magical kingdoms. "The chocolate sprinkles are tiny soldiers," Lily announced seriously, making Emma burst into laughter. Despite himself, Jack felt his lips twitch. He glanced at Victoria and caught her smiling too, not her usual polished, professional smile, but something real and warm that transformed her entire face. "They're quite the storytellers," Victoria said, using her spoon to draw patterns in her vanilla ice cream. "Emma gets it from her mother," Jack replied without thinking. "Sarah could turn anything into an adventure." Victoria's spoon paused. "Tell me about her." The question surprised him. Usually, people avoided mentioning Sarah, uncomfortable with the topic of death. But Victoria's eyes held genuine interest, no pity. "She was a kindergarten teacher," Jack found himself saying. "Could make any kid smile, no matter how scared or sad they were. That's actually why I started carrying bubbles. It was her trick first." Victoria leaned forward. "Really?" "Yeah. She'd say everybody needs a little magic sometimes." Jack chuckled at a memory. "Once, she brought bubbles to my VA support group. Bunch of tough veterans sitting in a circle, blowing bubbles. Should have looked ridiculous, but it helped," Victoria finished softly. "It did." Jack studied her face. "Why do you do it? The corporate thing?" Victoria glanced at Lily, her expression complicated. "Would you believe me if I said I started with good intentions? I wanted to create something that would help people make the world better, somewhere along the way." She trailed off. "You lost sight of the actual people?" Jack suggested, not unkindly. "Something like that." Victoria laughed suddenly, but it held a note of sadness. "Look at us, having an actual conversation. Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation as a grump," Jack joked, surprising himself. Their laughter mingled, genuine and unexpected. For a moment, Jack saw past Victoria's corporate armor to the woman beneath someone who might be just as lost and searching as he was. "Daddy," Emma called. "Come see our ice cream castle before it melts." They moved to the children's table, where Lily had constructed an elaborate story about a princess made of strawberry sauce who needed saving from an evil hot fudge dragon. Victoria added details about a brave knight made of whipped cream, making both girls dissolve into giggles. Jack watched her, seeing how she softened around the edges when she forgot to maintain her CEO persona. She caught him looking and raised an eyebrow questioningly. He shook his head slightly, not ready to analyze the warm feeling in his chest. That night, after Emma was asleep, Jack dozed off in his armchair, a photo album open on his lap. In his dreams, he walked through the community center's halls, but they were filled with bubbles that reflected rainbow light. Sarah stood at the end of the corridor, wearing the yellow dress she'd loved. "You're doing so well, Jack," she said, her smile as bright as he remembered. "But you're still carrying so much weight alone." "I'm trying to be strong," he told her. "For Emma, for the veterans who need the center." Sarah reached out, and though he couldn't feel her touch, he sensed her warmth. "Don't close your heart. Healing comes when you let others in." "I miss you," he whispered. "I know, but you're allowed to live, to laugh, to trust again." Her image began to fade. "Healing comes when you let others in, Jack." He woke with a start, the photo album sliding to the floor. The dream clung to him, Sarah's words echoing in his mind. He picked up the fallen album, looking at a photo of Sarah blowing bubbles with a tiny Emma. His chest felt lighter somehow, despite the uncertainty still hanging over the community center. Sarah had always been wise about matters of the heart. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to start listening. The community center buzzed with activity on Saturday morning as Jack and a group of veterans set up folding tables in the parking lot. Colorful balloons bobbed in the gentle breeze, and hand-painted signs announced Family Fun Day in cheerful letters. The aroma of grilling hot dogs and hamburgers already filled the air. "These streamers look crooked, Jack," Emma called from her perch on a stepladder, frowning at the decorations she was hanging. Jack smiled up at his daughter. "They're perfect, sweetheart. Sometimes the best things aren't perfectly straight." He steadied the ladder as she climbed down, her face bright with excitement. People began arriving in small groups, veterans with their families, neighborhood kids, curious locals drawn by the music and laughter. The parking lot slowly filled with the sounds of children playing and adults chatting. Some of the veterans had set up activity stations, face painting, ring toss, and a makeshift basketball hoop. Mike, one of the older veterans, manned the grill while telling stories that made the kids giggle. His wife Susan organized the potluck table, arranging casseroles and desserts brought by community members. The sense of unity was palpable. Jack's heart swelled as he watched Emma lead a group of children in a game of tag. This was what the center meant to people, not just a building, but a place where healing happened through simple moments of joy and connection. A familiar car pulled into the lot, and Jack's chest tightened. Victoria stepped out, looking slightly uncomfortable in casual clothes instead of her usual business attire. Lily bounded from the car, immediately spotting Emma and running to join the game. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Jack said as Victoria approached, hands tucked into her jean pockets. Lily wouldn't stop talking about it. Victoria glanced around, taking in the modest decorations and homemade signs. "This is different from the charity events I usually attend." "That's because it's not charity," Jack replied quietly. "It's community." Throughout the afternoon, veterans took turns sharing their stories at a small microphone set up near the center's entrance. They spoke of dark times, of struggles with PTSD, addiction, and loneliness. But more importantly, they spoke of hope. Hope they found within these walls. "This place saved my life," declared Sarah, a young veteran who had served in Afghanistan. "When I came home, I couldn't sleep, couldn't connect with my kids. The art therapy program here helped me find my way back to them." Her teenage daughter hugged her as she stepped down, both wiping tears. Victoria stood at the edge of the crowd, listening. Jack noticed her expression softening as story after story revealed the center's impact. When Lily tugged at her hand, leading her to the art station, Victoria followed without resistance. "Look, Mommy." Lily held up her painting proudly. "It's another bubble sky. See all the colors? The paper was covered in swirling circles of blue, purple, and gold. This is how I feel when Jack blows bubbles. All floaty and safe. Victoria touched the painting gently. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Her voice caught slightly. Why don't you go show Emma? As Lily skipped away, Jack approached with 2 paper plates of food. Hungry? He offered. Victoria accepted the plate, and they found a quiet spot by the food tables. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement, and the crowd had thinned slightly. Children's laughter still rang out from the playground. I had no idea, Victoria said softly, pushing food around her plate. The stories today. I never realized how much this place means to people. She looked up at Jack, her professional mask cracking. I need to tell you something. Her phone buzzed sharply. Victoria checked the screen and her face tightened. I have to take this. The shareholders are... She stopped, conflict clear in her eyes. I'm sorry. I have to go. Jack watched her walk away, phone pressed to her ear, her uneaten food still on the table beside him. Through the crowd, he saw Lily showing her bubble sky painting to anyone who would look, her face glowing with pride. The same pride he'd seen in Emma when she'd first started painting here, beginning to heal from her mother's death. He gathered the plates, trying to ignore the familiar ache of disappointment. The sun was setting, casting orange light across the community center's worn brick walls. Inside those walls, countless lives had been transformed. He wondered if Victoria truly understood what would be lost if they came down. A group of kids ran past, shrieking with joy as they chased soap bubbles floating on the evening breeze. Jack touched the small bottle in his pocket, a simple thing that had somehow started all of this. He turned back to the cleanup, letting the sounds of community wrap around him like a familiar embrace. The sun had set, casting long shadows across the community center's parking lot. Victoria's heels clicked against the asphalt as she walked from her car toward the building's entrance. She'd changed back into her business attire after taking Lily home, but the day's events kept pulling her back here. Through the glass doors, she could see Jack moving chairs, his movements methodical and purposeful. The overhead lights cast a warm glow over the now quiet space that had been filled with so much life just hours before. Victoria hesitated at the entrance, then pushed the door open. The sound made Jack look up, surprise crossing his features. Forgot something? He asked, straightening up. No, Victoria paused, searching for words. I couldn't stop thinking about today, about everything I heard. Jack nodded slowly, setting down the chair he'd been carrying. It gets to you, doesn't it? When you really see it up close. Yes. Victoria moved further into the room, her fingers trailing along a table covered with dried paint spots from countless art therapy sessions. I've attended hundreds of charity galas, written big checks, sat through presentations about making a difference. But this was real. Jack finished for her. He grabbed 2 folding chairs and set them up. Want to sit? Victoria settled into one of the chairs, careful to keep her professional composure despite the turmoil inside her. Jack sat across from her, his presence steady and grounding. How did you find this place? She asked softly. Jack's eyes grew distant. After Sarah, my wife, passed, I was in a bad way. Emma was only 4. I could barely function some days. He rubbed his hands together, a nervous gesture. The PTSD from my service, it got worse after losing Sarah. Nightmares, panic attacks. I wasn't the father Emma needed. Victoria listened, her heart aching at the pain in his voice. One of my old squadron buddies practically dragged me here, Jack continued. Said they had art therapy for vets and their kids. I thought it was stupid at first. A small smile touched his lips. But Emma loved it. And watching her paint, seeing her process, her grief through colors and shapes, it helped me start processing mine. That's why you always carry bubbles, Victoria realized. It's not just for comfort, it's art, a way to make beauty from pain. Jack nodded. Sometimes the simplest things save us. He looked at her carefully. "What brought you back here tonight, Victoria? Really?" The question hung in the air between them. Victoria stood, needing to move, to put space between herself and the vulnerability Jack's presence invited. "I have everything society says should make someone happy," she said finally, her back to him. "The corner office, the mansion, the influence. And I'm so lonely. I can barely breathe sometimes." Her voice cracked slightly. "Watching everyone today, the connections, the real relationships. I saw what I could have, if I wasn't so scared," Jack suggested gently. Victoria turned back to him, surprised by his insight. "Yes." Jack had risen too, standing closer now. "We're all scared, Victoria. But hiding from connection doesn't make the fear go away. It just makes us more alone." Something shifted in the air between them. Victoria could feel her heart pounding as Jack took another step closer. His eyes held such warmth, such understanding. She found herself swaying toward him, drawn by something deeper than attraction. Their faces were inches apart. Jack's hand came up to brush her cheek, and Victoria closed her eyes, feeling tears threaten. But then Jack stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "We can't," he said roughly. "There's too much at stake. The center, the kids, our daughters." Victoria nodded, gathering her composure even as her heart ached. "You're right. Of course you're right." She moved toward the door, needing escape. "I should go." "Victoria!" Jack called as she reached for the handle. She paused but didn't turn. "Thank you for coming back. For being honest." She nodded once and left quickly, her heels clicking rapidly across the parking lot. In her car, she pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, trying to steady her breathing. Later that night, Jack was finishing the cleanup when he noticed a manila folder that had fallen behind one of the tables. Picking it up, he found it contained development plans for the community center property. His blood ran cold as he read through the documents, coming to the final page. There, at the bottom of the demolition approval, was Victoria's elegant signature. The date showed she'd signed it just 2 weeks ago, long after they'd met, after she'd seen what the center meant to people. To him, the paper crumpled in his clenched fist as betrayal and rage coursed through him. All her vulnerable words tonight felt like lies now, a performance from someone who'd already decided the center's fate. He'd begun to trust her, to feel something for her, while all along she'd known she was going to destroy everything that mattered to him and his community. The morning sun streamed through the glass walls of Hayes Technologies' downtown office building. Jack's weathered work boots squeaked against the polished marble floor as he marched past startled receptionists. His face was etched with hurt and anger. The documents he'd found clutched tightly in his hand. "Sir, you can't just—" A security guard started to intercept him. "It's okay." Victoria's voice came from her office doorway. She stood there in an elegant navy suit, her expression carefully controlled. "Let him through." Jack brushed past her into the spacious corner office. Emma trailed behind him, holding Lily's hand. They'd been having a play date when Jack discovered the truth and insisted on coming straight here. "You signed this." Jack's voice was low and dangerous as he slapped the papers onto her pristine desk. "You personally approved the demolition. All that talk about looking into things was just for show, wasn't it?" Victoria's perfectly maintained composure cracked slightly. "Jack, please. It's not that simple. I sign dozens of contracts every—" "Don't." He cut her off, his hand shaking. "Don't try to explain away destroying people's lives with corporate paperwork. That center saves veterans. It saved me." His voice broke on the last word. Victoria stepped closer, reaching out. "Jack, I didn't realize." "Stop lying!" His shout made both girls jump. They huddled in the corner of the office, wide-eyed and frightened. "You knew exactly what you were doing. What was all this then? Getting close to us, pretending to care? Was it just to make the transition smoother?" "No." Victoria's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide how pale she'd become. "The center, the veterans. I truly didn't connect it to the development project when I signed. There are so many deals." "Right. Just another day at the office for you. Jack's laugh was bitter. Just another building to tear down. Just more little people to step on while you climb higher. Lily began to cry, clinging to Emma. Daddy, please don't be mad at my mommy. The sound of her tears seemed to hit Jack like a physical blow. He stumbled back, memories of war and loss threatening to overwhelm him. The office walls felt like they were closing in. Emma, he said roughly, we're leaving. Now. But Daddy, Emma's voice quivered. Now. He grabbed her hand, pulling her away from Lily. No, Lily wailed, reaching for her friend. Don't take Emma away, please. Victoria rushed to comfort her daughter, but her eyes never left Jack's face. We can talk about this. There must be a solution. There's nothing to talk about. Jack's voice was cold. You've shown exactly who you are, a signature on paper. That's all we were worth to you. He looked down at the crying girls. Emma, say goodbye to Lily. This friendship is over. Daddy, no, Emma sobbed, clinging to her friend. The sight of their daughter's grief cut through Jack's anger for a moment, making him hesitate. But then he remembered the veterans who depended on the center, remembered his own dark days, when it had been his only lifeline. The betrayal burned fresh. I trusted you, he said quietly to Victoria. I started to believe, but you're just like all the rest. Profit over people, always. Victoria's composed mask finally shattered completely. Jack, please listen. But he was already steering Emma toward the door, his daughter's tears soaking into his shirt as she cried against him. Behind them, Lily's heartbroken wails echoed through the office. The drive home was silent, except for Emma's quiet sobs. Jack's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his mind racing with memories he'd thought were buried, of losing his wife, of the dark days that followed, of learning to trust again at the center. Now it would all be torn away. He pulled into their driveway, but couldn't bring himself to get out of the car. Emma had cried herself to sleep in the back seat, tear tracks staining her cheeks. Looking at her, Jack felt the familiar walls closing in around his heart. He'd been a fool to let them down, to think someone like Victoria Hayes could ever understand what that center meant to people like him. His hands started shaking as the PTSD symptoms he thought he'd conquered began creeping back. The world felt dangerous again, full of threats and betrayals. He'd let Victoria get too close, let himself hope for something more. Never again. Jack carried Emma inside and tucked her into bed, though it was only afternoon. She stirred slightly, whimpering Lily in her sleep. The sound twisted in his chest like a knife. Moving through the house like a ghost, Jack methodically locked every door and window. He closed all the blinds, shutting out the world. In the growing darkness, he sank into his armchair, letting the isolation wrap around him like a shield. His phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Victoria, but he ignored them all. The community center had taught him that healing came through connection, through trust. But now, he knew better. Trust was just another weapon to be used against you. Better to be alone than to risk being hurt again. The afternoon faded into evening, and still, Jack sat motionless in his chair, lost in memories of war, of loss, of betrayal. He had survived by keeping people at arm's length. He'd forgotten that lesson once. He wouldn't make that mistake again. In the growing shadows, Jack Carter rebuilt the walls around his heart, brick by brick, determined that no one would ever breach them again. A week crawled by like molasses on a cold day. Jack's small house felt emptier than usual, the silence broken only by Emma's quiet sniffles at bedtime. The bottle of bubbles sat untouched on the kitchen counter, collecting dust. Jack stared at his phone, ignoring another call from Mike, one of the veterans from the center. 12 missed calls this week. 23 unread text messages. He couldn't face them, not after everything that happened. Daddy? Emma stood in the doorway of his bedroom, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. Can we go to the center today, miss? Rosa said she'd help me finish my painting. Jack's chest tightened. Not today, sweetheart. Maybe Maybe next week.
That's what you said yesterday.
Emma's lower lip trembled. And the day before. I miss my friends. I miss Lily. Jack turned away, unable to meet his daughter's eyes.
I know, baby, I just need some time.
Emma's footsteps padded away, followed by the soft click of her bedroom door. Jack's hands shook as he reached for the framed photo of his late wife on the nightstand.
What would you do, Sarah? He whispered. I thought I was doing better. I thought I could trust again.
Across town, in her gleaming penthouse office, Victoria Hayes sat surrounded by stacks of financial reports and legal documents. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, her usually perfect makeup slightly smudged. She hadn't slept well in days.
Mommy?
Lily's small voice drew her attention from the computer screen.
Can we go see Emma today?
Victoria's heart clenched.
I'm sorry, sweetie. Emma and her daddy. They need some space right now.
But why? Lily climbed onto her mother's lap, something she hadn't done in months.
The bubble man always makes things better.
He said bubbles carry worries away. Can't you make things better like he does? Victoria hugged her daughter close, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo.
I wish it were that simple, baby.
You're a superhero at work. That's what you always say. Superheroes fix things. Lily's eyes were wide and earnest.
Please, Mommy, make it safe again.
Victoria's gaze drifted to the corporate contract on her desk, the one that would demolish the community center. The one she'd signed without really reading, too busy with quarterly projections and shareholder meetings. The one that would destroy a sanctuary for broken souls trying to heal. That evening, Victoria sat in her home office, surrounded by financial statements and property assessments. Her personal investment portfolio glowed on the screen before her. Years of smart decisions, calculated risks, and relentless ambition had built her fortune. Now, she was about to risk it all. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, drafting emails to her board of directors. She worked through the night, crunching numbers, making calls to her most trusted advisors. The sun was rising when she finally had a plan. At breakfast, Lily found her mother still in yesterday's clothes, but with a strange light in her eyes.
Mommy, did you sleep?
Victoria smiled, really smiled, for the first time in days.
No, sweetie. I was too busy being a superhero.
She pulled out her phone, dialing her PR team. Call a press conference for this afternoon and get me the mayor's office on the line. She paused, looking at her daughter. It's time to make things safe again. In his kitchen, Jack mechanically stirred his coffee, the morning news playing softly on the radio. Emma picked at her cereal, pushing the soggy flakes around the bowl. The center called again, she said quietly. Mr. Mike says they miss us. Jack's spoon clinked against the mug.
Emma, you always said running away doesn't solve anything, she continued, her voice small but steady.
That's what you told me when I was scared of starting school. You said brave people face their fears. Jack's throat tightened. When had his little girl gotten so wise? The radio suddenly crackled with breaking news. We interrupt this program for a special announcement. Hayes Technologies CEO Victoria Hayes has called an emergency press conference for this afternoon regarding the controversial downtown development project. Jack's hand froze mid-stir. Emma looked up, hope flickering across her face. Victoria stood in her closet, carefully selecting her outfit. Not her usual power suit. No, today called for something different. She chose a simple blue dress, the color reminding her of the sky in Lily's bubble paintings. Are you really going to help the bubble man's special place? Lily asked, watching her mother apply lipstick. Victoria knelt down, meeting her daughter's eyes. Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes being a superhero means admitting you were wrong, and then doing whatever it takes to make it right. She gathered her papers, checked her presentation one last time, and took a deep breath. Her phone buzzed with messages from concerned board members, but she ignored them. For once in her life, Victoria Hayes wasn't going to let fear of failure guide her decisions. The morning crept by. Jack paced his living room, the radio still playing softly. Part of him wanted to turn it off, to shut out anything involving Victoria Hayes, but a smaller, more hopeful part kept him listening. Emma sat cross-legged on the couch, her elephant clutched tight.
Daddy, can we pray for Lily's mom? Like we used to pray for you when you were sad?
Jack stopped pacing. His daughter's simple faith pierced through his anger like a shaft of sunlight through storm clouds. He sat beside her, pulling her close.
Yeah, baby, we can do that.
Victoria's hands were steady as she organized her notes at the podium. Camera lights flashed. Reporters murmured. In the front row, Lily sat with her nanny, wearing her favorite dress covered in bubble patterns. The mayor stood to one side, looking confused but intrigued. Victoria's board members huddled together, whispering urgently, but for the first time in her career, Victoria Hayes wasn't thinking about shareholders or profit margins. She was thinking about Jack's gentle hands helping a veteran with a paintbrush, about Emma teaching Lily to make paper airplanes, about broken people finding healing through simple acts of kindness. Victoria squared her shoulders and stepped up to the microphone. In her mind, she heard Lily's words again. Make it safe again. Like the bubble man would. She opened her folder, looked out at the sea of expectant faces, and prepared to risk everything she'd built, knowing that sometimes the biggest acts of courage start with the smallest bubbles of hope. The morning sun streamed through Victoria's office windows as she adjusted her navy blazer one last time. Her hands trembled slightly as she reviewed her hastily written speech. The press conference would start in 30 minutes, and for the first time in her career, she felt genuinely nervous. Miss Hayes? Her assistant poked her head in. The reporters are gathering outside. Victoria nodded, gathering her courage. Thank you, Sarah. And the papers? All signed and ready. Sarah placed a thick folder on Victoria's desk. Are you sure about this? The board will have to accept it, Victoria said firmly, though her stomach churned. Sometimes doing the right thing costs everything. At home, Jack sat on his worn couch, absently flipping through TV channels. Emma was at school, and the house felt too quiet. He paused when he saw Victoria's face on the local news channel. His finger hovered over the remote, ready to change the channel, but something made him stop. Victoria stood at a podium outside her corporate headquarters, cameras flashing. Her usual confident smile was replaced by something more vulnerable, more real. Jack's throat tightened as he recognized that look. It was the same expression she'd worn during their almost kiss at the community center. Good morning, Victoria began, her voice steady despite her visible nervousness. I've called this press conference to announce a significant change in Hayes Technologies' development plans for the East Side District. Jack leaned forward, his heart pounding. Effective immediately, we are canceling the mixed-use development project scheduled for 1420 Pine Street. She paused as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Instead, I am personally pledging $20 million to transform the existing community center into a state-of-the-art wellness hub for veterans, families, and children. The reporters erupted with questions. Jack sat frozen, unable to believe what he was hearing. Victoria raised her hand for silence. I know this decision will surprise many, especially our shareholders. But sometimes, she took a deep breath, and her professional mask slipped, revealing raw emotion. Sometimes, we need someone to remind us of what truly matters in life. The camera zoomed in on her face, and Jack could see tears in her eyes. Recently, I witnessed firsthand how this community center saves lives. I saw veterans finding peace through art therapy. I watched children heal from trauma. I observed families rebuilding themselves piece by piece. She gripped the podium tighter, and I learned this lesson from one man. A man who showed me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch. Jack's hands shook as he reached for his phone, finding dozens of missed calls and texts from the veterans. They were all watching too. "This man," Victoria's voice cracked slightly. "He taught me that sometimes the simplest act of kindness, like blowing bubbles for a crying child, can change everything. His compassion, his dedication to others, and his unwavering faith in second chances reminded me of who I used to be, before spreadsheets and profit margins became my whole world." The front door burst open as Emma ran in, her backpack still on. The school was only 2 blocks away, and she must have sprinted home after seeing the news in her classroom. "Daddy!" she cried, tears streaming down her face. "Look, Miss Victoria is on TV. She saved our center." Jack pulled Emma into his lap, holding her tight as they watched together. On screen, Victoria continued, her professional composure returning. The new facility will feature expanded art therapy spaces, counseling rooms, a children's play area, and modern medical facilities for our veterans. We'll preserve everything that makes this center special while providing the resources it needs to serve even more families. She shuffled her papers, then looked directly into the camera. Jack felt like she was speaking directly to him, to the veterans, the children, and every person who finds shelter within those walls. "Your home is safe." And to those who taught me this valuable lesson, she paused, blinking back tears. "Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to change course, to choose love over fear, and to believe in something bigger than ourselves." Emma squeezed Jack's hand. "She did it, Daddy! She really did it!" Jack couldn't speak. He watched as Victoria fielded questions from reporters, handling their skepticism about shareholder reactions with grace and determination. She outlined specific plans for the center's renovation, promising minimal disruption to existing programs. "When will construction begin?" a reporter called out. "The paperwork is already signed," Victoria replied. "We start next month, working around the center's schedule to ensure no one's therapy or support groups are interrupted." Another reporter raised his hand. "Miss Hayes, what prompted this dramatic change of direction?" Victoria smiled, and Jack recognized the genuine warmth he'd seen that evening at the center. "Let's just say I learned that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can create the biggest ripples. Sometimes all it takes is one person showing you a different way to see the world." Emma bounced on Jack's lap. "She means you, Daddy! You and your bubbles!" Jack hugged his daughter closer, his vision blurring with tears. He thought about Victoria's words, about ripples of kindness. He remembered that first day in the park, how a simple bottle of bubbles had connected their lives in ways he never could have imagined. On screen, Victoria concluded the press conference. "Thank you for your time. The official paperwork will be available to the media within the hour." She stepped away from the podium, ignoring further questions as she walked back into her building. "Daddy," Emma said, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "She saved our center. Now I can still paint with Mr. Mike and see Lily and—" "Yes, sweetheart," Jack managed, his voice rough with emotion. "She did something amazing." Emma slid off his lap and ran to the kitchen counter. She returned with the dusty bottle of bubbles that had started everything. "Can we go to the park? Please? Maybe Lily and Miss Victoria will be there?" Jack took the bottle, rolling it between his palms. He thought about walls built from fear and pain, and how sometimes it took a simple act of trust to break them down. He thought about second chances, about healing, about the courage it takes to change. "You know what, Emma? I think that's a wonderful idea." The community center's front entrance looked different in the bright morning light. Victoria Hayes stepped out of her sleek black car, trading her usual heels for practical flats. Her designer suit felt strangely out of place among the worn brick walls and faded murals. A small team of architects and contractors followed behind her, clipboards in hand. Inside, the familiar scent of art supplies and coffee mixed with morning sunshine. Veterans gathered in small groups, some nodding politely as Victoria passed, others watching with cautious hope. She noticed Jack's truck in the parking lot but didn't see him anywhere. Emma's voice rang out from the art room. "Miss Victoria!" The little girl came running, paint streaks on her cheeks. Lily broke away from her nanny and rushed to hug her friend. The two girls collided in a tangle of giggles and excited chatter.
I missed you so much, Lily squealed, squeezing Emma tight. Victoria's heart squeezed watching them. These past weeks of keeping the girls apart had been harder than any business negotiation. She knelt down to their level, smoothing Lily's hair. Why don't you two go paint together? I need to talk to Emma's dad. The girls scampered off, hand in hand. Victoria stood, straightening her jacket, and asked one of the veterans where she might find Jack. He pointed toward the back garden. She found him there, kneeling in the dirt, helping another veteran plant tomatoes. His shoulders tensed at her approach, but he didn't walk away. Progress, she thought. Jack, she said softly. Do you have a minute? He stood slowly, wiping his hands on his jeans. His face was carefully neutral, but she saw the wariness in his eyes. The architects are here? Yes, but first, I'd like to talk. Just us. Jack nodded toward a weathered wooden bench near the garden. They sat with careful space between them, the morning air still cool and fresh. Victoria noticed his hands, dirt under the fingernails, strong and capable, so different from the manicured executives she usually dealt with. I've been thinking about Bubbles, she said finally. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Bubbles? That day in the park, you knew exactly what my daughter needed. Not expensive toys or special treatments, just Bubbles and kindness. Victoria's voice grew thick. I've spent years thinking success meant bigger deals, more power. But watching you here, seeing how you help people heal with the simplest things, she trailed off, fighting tears. Jack's expression softened slightly. Victoria, please, let me finish. She took a deep breath. I was wrong about everything. I signed that demolition order without truly looking at what I was destroying. I got so caught up in quarterly profits that I forgot about actual people. She met his eyes directly. I'm sorry, Jack, truly sorry. He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. That press conference yesterday. You're risking everything to save this place. Yes, why? Victoria looked out at the garden, where the veteran was still carefully planting tomatoes. Because you showed me what real strength looks like. It's not in boardrooms or billion-dollar deals. It's here, in gardens and art rooms and bubble-filled skies. She smiled slightly. In fathers who carry hope in their pockets. Jack's shoulders relaxed slightly. The shareholders won't be happy. No, they're already threatening legal action. She shrugged. Let them. Some things matter more. From inside came the sound of children laughing. Their daughters' voices mixed with others, bright and clear. Jack's expression grew thoughtful. You really want to help rebuild this place? If you'll let me. Not as a corporate takeover, but as a partner. These people trust you, Jack. They need you. I have the resources, but you have the heart. She hesitated. Maybe together we could make something amazing here. Jack was quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. Finally, he nodded. The art therapy program needs expanding, and the garden could use a greenhouse. Relief flooded through Victoria. I'd like to add a proper counseling center. And maybe a playground? The kids would love that. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You really mean this, don't you? Every word. Inside, they could hear Emma and Lily singing some made-up song about butterflies and rainbow skies. Jack's smile grew more real. Our daughters never doubted we'd work it out. Kids are smarter than adults sometimes, Victoria said. Speaking of which, she nodded toward the center's entrance, where Emma and Lily stood watching them hopefully. Can we be best friends again? Emma called out. Please? Lily added, bouncing on her toes. Jack and Victoria exchanged looks. He stood first, offering her his hand. What do you say? Partners? Victoria took his hand, noting how warm and solid it felt. Partners. The girls rushed forward with happy squeals, wrapping them both in hugs. Jack's hand tightened briefly around Victoria's before letting go. But something had shifted between them, like a door being carefully, cautiously opened. Should we go look at those renovation plans? Jack asked. Victoria nodded, watching their daughters skip ahead of them, already planning their next adventure. Yes, I think it's time to build something new. The rhythmic sound of hammers and drills filled the community center as construction crews worked on the building's east wing. Through the dusty windows, morning sunlight cast long shadows across drop cloths and scaffolding. Jack Carter stood in his usual spot, helping veterans arrange chairs in a circle for the morning's therapy session, while trying to ignore the constant construction noise. At least they're keeping this room quiet for us, said Mike, an older veteran with graying hair, as he placed the last chair. Victoria made sure of that, Jack replied, surprising himself with how naturally her name came to his lips now. 3 weeks had passed since her announcement, and though trust came slowly, he couldn't deny her dedication to the project. As if summoned by his thoughts, Victoria appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. She'd adapted her wardrobe for these daily site visits, trading power suits for elegant but practical clothing that wouldn't show construction dust. Today she wore dark jeans and a simple blue blouse. "Everything okay for the session?" she asked, keeping her distance. Her voice was professional but carried an undertone of genuine concern. Jack nodded. "We're good here. How's the expansion coming along?" "On schedule." She glanced at her tablet. The new art therapy wing should be ready in 2 weeks. Their conversation still carried this careful formality, like two people walking on thin ice. But it was progress from the anger and hurt of weeks before. The sound of children's laughter echoed from the hallway. Emma and Lily burst into the room, their hands covered in paint from the temporary art corner they'd set up in the cafeteria. "Daddy, look what we made!" Emma held up a colorful painting of what appeared to be 4 people holding hands under a sky full of bubbles. Lily bounced excitedly beside her friend. "That's you and Emma, and me and Mommy," she explained, pointing to each figure. Victoria moved closer to examine the artwork, and Jack caught the slight tremor in her hand as she touched the still wet paint. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said softly. The girls ran off again, their giggles fading down the hall. Jack watched Victoria's expression soften as she stared after them. "They're healing us as much as we're healing them," he said quietly. Victoria met his eyes, a moment of shared understanding passing between them. "I never knew how much Lily needed this place." "Needed." She hesitated. "All of you." Throughout the morning, Jack led his therapy session while Victoria moved between construction meetings and funding calls. He couldn't help noticing how she'd stop to chat with veterans, learning their names, listening to their stories. They'd begun to accept her, not as the billionaire who'd saved their center, but as someone who genuinely cared. "That Hayes woman," said Sarah, a veteran who rarely spoke during sessions. "She actually gets it now. You can see it in her eyes when she listens." By afternoon, the construction crews had wrapped up for the day. The center settled into its usual peaceful rhythm. Jack found Victoria in the cafeteria, surrounded by blueprints while Emma and Lily colored nearby. "The contractors need a decision on the meditation garden," she said without looking up. "I thought you might want to weigh in, since it was your idea." Jack pulled up a chair, noticing how she no longer stiffened when he sat close. They spent an hour reviewing plans, their shoulders occasionally brushing as they leaned over the drawings. Her perfume was subtle but distracting. "The veterans will love this," he said, pointing to the planned water feature. "The sound helps with anxiety." Victoria made a note on her tablet. "Like your bubbles?" "Something like that." He smiled, remembering their first meeting at the park. It felt like years ago instead of months. As evening approached, the girls begged to play outside before heading home. The summer air was warm and sweet, filled with the first fireflies of the season. Jack and Victoria sat on the center's front steps, watching their daughters chase the glowing insects across the lawn. "Look, Daddy, we caught one," Emma called out, running over with cupped hands. Lily followed, their heads bent together as they peeked at their tiny captive. "Remember to let it go," Jack reminded them. "Everything needs its freedom." Victoria shifted beside him. "Wise words," she said quietly. The girls released the firefly, squealing with delight as it floated away.
Their laughter echoed across the darkening lawn, pure and uninhibited. "I never thought I'd find this," Victoria admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Find what? Peace. Purpose. Whatever this is." She gestured vaguely at the center, the children, the quiet evening around them. Jack understood. He'd found the same healing here, among broken warriors and innocent children. Together, they watched their daughters dance through the twilight, their shadows merging in the fading light. Without thinking, he rested his hand on the step between them. Victoria's fingers brushed against his, a touch so light it might have been accidental. But when Jack didn't pull away, her pinky finger hooked gently over his. They sat in comfortable silence, their hands barely touching, while fireflies rose like stars around their daughters' joyful faces. For the first time in years, Jack felt the weight of grief and distrust begin to lift, replaced by something fragile and new. The moment stretched, peaceful and perfect, until Emma's voice broke the spell. "Daddy, can we catch just one more?" "Last one," he called back, but didn't move from his spot on the steps. Victoria's finger was still linked with his, and neither seemed willing to break that tentative connection. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings as crowds gathered outside the renovated community center. Colorful balloons danced in the wind, and a large banner reading, "Grand Opening, Veterans and Family Wellness Hub," stretched across the entrance. Children darted between clusters of adults, their laughter mixing with the excited chatter of the assembled townspeople. Jack Carter stood at the edge of the crowd, his heart swelling at the sight of so many familiar faces. The veterans he'd worked with for years were there, some with their families, others supporting each other as they always had. They wore their best clothes, faces bright with pride and anticipation. Emma tugged at his sleeve, practically bouncing in her shiny new shoes. "Daddy, look how pretty everything is." She pointed to the flower arrangements lining the walkway, each one carefully chosen by Victoria. "It sure is, sweetheart," Jack replied, straightening his tie. He wasn't used to wearing one, but today was special. The center that had saved him after losing his wife had not only been saved itself, but transformed into something even more remarkable. Victoria Hayes stood near the podium, greeting guests with grace despite the nervous energy Jack could see in her eyes. She wore a simple blue dress that made her look more approachable than her usual corporate attire. Lily clung to her mother's hand, wearing a matching ribbon in her hair. Mayor Thompson stepped up to the microphone, and the crowd settled. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we're celebrating today is more than just a building. It's about community, healing, and the power of coming together." Jack watched as several veterans nodded in agreement. He spotted old Bill, who'd been coming to art therapy since the beginning, dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief. Next to him, Sarah, a young veteran who'd struggled with PTSD, held her toddler close while her husband squeezed her shoulder. The mayor continued, "We have two very special people to thank for this miracle. First, please welcome Jack Carter, whose dedication to our veterans and children has touched countless lives." The applause was thunderous. Emma gave him a gentle push, and Jack made his way to the podium, his steps measured and deliberate. He pulled the folded paper from his pocket, but as he looked out at the sea of faces, people whose stories of pain and triumph he knew intimately, he set it aside. "You know," he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart, "when I came back from deployment, I was lost. My wife was gone, and I had a little girl who needed me to be whole when I felt anything but." He paused, meeting Emma's proud gaze. "This center became our lifeline. Not because of the programs or the therapy sessions, though those helped. It was the people, the community we built here." Veterans in the crowd called out words of encouragement. Jack saw Victoria watching him intently, her eyes soft with understanding. "I learned that healing isn't something you do alone," Jack continued. "It happens in small moments when you help a crying child feel safe with something as simple as bubbles, when you share your pain with others who understand, when you discover that even in your darkest moments, you're not alone." He glanced at Victoria, remembering their journey from mistrust to something deeper. And sometimes, healing comes from unexpected places. From people who show us that it's never too late to change, to grow, to choose love over fear. The crowd's attention shifted to Victoria, who blushed slightly but stood tall. Mayor Thompson invited her to the podium, and she moved forward with characteristic elegance. "When I first came to this town," Victoria began, "I saw everything through spreadsheets and profit margins. But then I witnessed something extraordinary, a stranger kneeling beside my crying daughter, teaching her that even our biggest worries can float away like bubbles in the wind." Her voice wavered slightly. "Jack Carter showed me what true strength looks like. It's not in boardrooms or bank accounts. It's in small acts of kindness that ripple outward, changing lives one heart at a time." Several veterans called out their agreement, and Victoria's professional composure cracked as she smiled through tears. "This center isn't my gift to the community. It's my thank you for showing me what really matters." Before either Jack or Victoria could step away, Emma and Lily darted forward. The girls had clearly planned this moment, giggling as they grabbed their parents' hands and pulled them together at center stage. "Stand together," Lily demanded, her voice carrying across the crowd. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, like a real family." A wave of chuckles rippled through the audience as Jack and Victoria found themselves shoulder to shoulder, their daughters beaming up at them. The townspeople burst into applause, some whistling, others cheering. The veterans, led by Old Bill, started a standing ovation that spread through the crowd like wildfire. Jack felt Victoria's hand brush against his, and this time, neither pulled away. They stood there, fingers intertwined, as their daughters hugged their legs, and the community they'd helped build celebrated around them. The autumn breeze picked up again, carrying the sound of joy and new beginnings across the town, while overhead, a few stray balloons danced against the endless blue sky like bubbles carrying worries away, making room for hope to take root and grow. The celebration had wound down as evening settled over the town. Paper plates and cups had been cleared away, the last pieces of cake distributed to eager children, and most of the guests had departed with warm hugs and heartfelt congratulations. Only the gentle glow of streetlights illuminated the parking lot where Victoria's car sat waiting. Jack walked beside Victoria, their footsteps falling in sync on the concrete. In the back seat of her luxury SUV, Emma and Lily were curled up together like puppies, exhausted from the day's excitement. Their small faces were peaceful in sleep, Emma's head resting on Lily's shoulder, their hands still loosely clasped. "They're beautiful when they're quiet," Victoria whispered, peering through the window. Her smile was soft in the dim light, all her usual corporate polish stripped away. "They wore themselves out today," Jack replied, his voice equally hushed. "Emma hasn't been this happy in a long time." They stood there for a moment, watching their daughters sleep. The night air was cool but not cold, carrying the scent of late summer flowers from the newly planted garden beds around the center. Jack felt his heart beating faster, aware of Victoria's presence beside him, of all the words that had gone unsaid between them. "Victoria," he began, then paused, gathering his courage. She turned to face him, her eyes questioning. "These past few months, they've changed everything." She nodded, waiting for him to continue. Her hands fidgeted with her car keys, a rare show of nervousness from someone usually so composed. "When I lost Sarah," Jack's voice caught slightly, but he pressed on. "I thought that was it for me. I figured I'd just focus on Emma and the center, keep my head down, do what good I could. I didn't think I'd ever." He took a deep breath. "I didn't think I'd feel this way again." Victoria's eyes glistened in the street light. "Jack! Let me finish," he said gently. "When I first met you, I thought you were just another rich executive who didn't care about people like us. I was so wrong. You're one of the most caring people I've ever known. You just needed someone to remind you it was okay to show it." A tear slipped down Victoria's cheek. She quickly wiped it away, but her voice was shaky when she spoke. "I've been terrified," she admitted. "Not of you, of this feeling. I built my whole life around being in control, never letting anyone close enough to hurt me. But then you came along with your bubbles and your quiet strength." She laughed softly. "Do you know how infuriating it is to have someone completely upend your worldview?" Jack smiled, reaching out to touch her hand. "About as infuriating as having a stubborn billionaire refuse to give up on you?" "I'm not stubborn," Victoria protested. But she was smiling too. "I'm determined." "Determined," Jack agreed, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "And brave, and beautiful." Victoria's breath caught. She stepped closer, close enough that Jack could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "I feel safe with you," she whispered. "I haven't felt safe with anyone in so long." Jack's free hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch impossibly gentle. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised. "Not anymore." Victoria tilted her face up to his. And finally, after months of almost moments and interrupted chances, their lips met. The kiss was soft and sweet, full of tender promise. Jack's arms wrapped around her waist as Victoria's hands found their way to his shoulders, holding on like she never wanted to let go. When they finally parted, staying close enough that their foreheads touched, Jack smiled. "You know what?" he murmured. "What?" Victoria's eyes were still closed, her lips curved in a content smile. "Maybe bubbles really do carry worries away." Victoria laughed quietly, resting her head on his shoulder. Through the car window, their daughters slept on, unaware that their fairy tale wish had finally come true. They stood there together in the gentle glow of the streetlights, two souls who had found healing in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected person. The night wrapped around them like a warm blanket, full of promise and possibility, as the stars twinkled overhead in silent blessing. The autumn sun painted golden streaks through the changing leaves as Jack spread a checkered blanket beneath the old maple tree. It was the same spot where, months ago, he had first blown bubbles for a crying little girl. Now, Emma and Lily giggled together as they unpacked the wicker picnic basket Victoria had brought, their small hands carefully arranging sandwiches and fruit on paper plates. "Daddy, can we have the bubbles now?" Emma asked, her eyes bright with anticipation. Jack smiled, reaching into his familiar jacket pocket where he always kept a bottle. "After lunch, sweetheart," Victoria answered before Jack could, giving him a knowing look. "Remember what we talked about, good things come to those who wait." The girls sat cross-legged on the blanket, sharing whispered secrets and occasional bursts of laughter. Jack watched them, his heart full. Emma hadn't smiled like this since before her mother passed away. Beside him, Victoria leaned back on her elbows, her normally perfect hair slightly tousled by the breeze. She had traded her usual business attire for jeans and a soft sweater, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. "Who would have thought?" she mused quietly, following his gaze to their daughters. "That day, when I watched you help Lily, I never imagined we'd end up here." Jack reached for her hand, his calloused fingers intertwining with hers. "Sometimes the best things in life catch us by surprise." They shared a peaceful lunch, interrupted only by the occasional passing jogger or the distant bark of a dog. The autumn air carried the sweet scent of fallen leaves and approaching evening. When the girls finished their sandwiches, they looked expectantly at Jack. Okay, he chuckled, pulling out 2 bottles of bubbles, one for each of them. Emma and Lily squealed with delight, scrambling to their feet. "Watch this, Mom," Lily called out, waving her wand in wide circles. Dozens of iridescent spheres floated upward, catching the sunlight. Emma joined in, and soon the air was filled with dancing bubbles. "Hey, if it isn't the Bubble Man himself," a familiar voice called out. Jack turned to see Mike, one of the veterans from his art therapy group, walking toward them with his service dog. Several other veterans followed, their weekend walk having brought them through the park. "Mr. Mike," Emma waved enthusiastically. "Want to blow bubbles with us?" The gruff veteran's face softened as he accepted a bubble wand from her. Soon, the entire group was involved, creating a shower of bubbles that drew amazed stares from passing families. Victoria watched as Jack chatted easily with his friends, noting how his shoulders relaxed in their presence. "Ma'am," Sarah, a young veteran with a prosthetic leg, approached Victoria. "What you did for the center, it means everything to us. You're family now, you know that, right?" Victoria felt tears prick at her corners of her eyes. In all her years of corporate success, she'd never felt as accepted as she did in this moment, surrounded by bubbles and laughter and genuine friendship. The veterans stayed for a while, sharing stories and jokes. When they finally continued their walk, each one hugged Victoria goodbye, something that would have made her uncomfortable months ago but now felt natural. As the afternoon light began to soften, Emma and Lily collapsed on the blanket, tired but happy. Their bubble bottles were nearly empty, but their faces shone with joy. "One more time, Daddy?" Emma asked sleepily. "The special way?" Jack stood up, helping Victoria to her feet. He took the last bottle of bubbles and held it up. Victoria's hand found his free one, squeezing gently. "Remember what I told you about bubbles?" he asked the girls, who nodded eagerly. "They carry worries away," Lily recited, snuggling against her mother's legs. "And bring happy thoughts instead," Emma added. Jack smiled, lifting the bubble wand to his lips. With one gentle breath, he sent a stream of bubbles floating toward the golden sky. They caught the light, transforming into tiny prisms that scattered rainbow colors across the park. Victoria watched the bubbles drift higher, each one carrying the memory of their journey from that first moment of kindness to the healing of their broken hearts. She thought about the corporate world she'd once lived in, where success was measured in dollars and deals. Here, under the maple tree with Jack's hand in hers and their daughter's laughter in her ears, she finally understood what real success felt like. All around them, the park bustled with life. Families walked their dogs, children played on the swings, and elderly couples sat on benches feeding birds. The community center, visible through the trees, stood as a testament to what could happen when compassion won over commerce. Through its doors flowed a constant stream of veterans finding healing, children discovering joy, and people connecting in ways that mattered. The late afternoon sun caught the last few bubbles as they danced away on the breeze. Emma and Lily watched them go, their eyes heavy with contentment. Victoria felt Jack's thumb brush across her knuckles, a small gesture that spoke volumes about how far they'd come. Sometimes, the smallest acts of compassion ripple out to heal hearts, build families, and transform entire communities. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Jack Carter, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please, don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.